Welcome back to Speak Out with Christine Jurgen. I am your host, and today we are joined by Elizabeth Troutman Mitchell. Elizabeth is a reporter for the Daily Signal, primarily covering life, gender, and education. She is also the co-host of the Daily Signal podcast, so we have that in common. We both are hosting podcasts, and today we're going to dive into some of the topics that she's covering at the Daily Signal because there's a lot that she's exposing and that needs to be talked about. Emergency room visits appear to rise after FDA relaxed abortion pill restrictions. Crazy. I don't see the abortion industry talking about that at all, so we're going to. Michigan Democrats want to teach minors about abortion as family planning option. Okay, no, that's not all right. Parents in Massachusetts school district can't opt out of sexuality, gender identity lessons. How would parents not be able to opt their children out of a lesson that they don't want them to learn? I don't want my kids learning anything gender identity specific. I think that's absolutely insane. And I am the parent and parental rights exist. And I know what is best for my child, not a teacher or a school district, or certainly somebody who doesn't know them that wrote some sort of flippant curriculum that has no basis in science whatsoever. Anyway, today we are diving into all of this and more right here on Speak Out. Elizabeth, thank you so much for joining us today. I am really excited to have you and talk to you. You're doing phenomenal work over at the Daily Signal, who I am a big fan of. So I'm glad I get the chance to catch up with you today.
Thanks so much. Me too.
So, okay, you are a reporter. Let's just start at the very beginning. You're a reporter. How did you get into reporting? You're at the Daily Signal now. Give us a little bit of background of who you are, what you do, for those who might not know you yet.
I have been at the Daily Signal for about 6 months now. I recently graduated from Hillsdale College, and that's kind of where I decided that I wanted to go into reporting because I really love writing. I actually was involved with Students for Life a little bit in high school and really wanted to be involved with pro-life issues and getting awareness out there about what's going on with abortion. And I thought that reporting was a really great way to make sure that people know what's really happening with that. And so that was a big motivating factor for me.
Yeah, that's awesome. Did you like Hillsdale? I've heard phenomenal things about Hillsdale.
I loved it. It was awesome. Highly recommend.
Yeah, that's one of the colleges that I'm like, it's not woke yet. I would actually consider sending my kids there. Okay, so I want to know, obviously you kind of are diving into the life issue. I've seen you touch on the gender issue with your reporting. Really a lot of things that are protecting children inside and outside the womb, which I love because that's a passion of mine. That's why I'm in the pro-life movement, but also why I care about kids outside the womb as well. And we're seeing a lot of crazy stuff. Do you find that it's hard as a reporter reporting on these life things, finding really detailed information about the safety and efficacy of the abortion pill and abortion in general?
Absolutely. So a couple months before the election, I decided that I wanted to determine the number of women going to the emergency room from the abortion pill. And this turned out to be an extremely difficult task because most states you have to pay thousands of dollars to get emergency room data. There's very little information on emergency room abortion visits. And even if I were to have purchased more of that data, a lot of times abortion is miscoded by doctors or nurses as miscarriage. And so it's very hard to get to the bottom of how many abortions are happening, what kind of complications we're seeing, because I think this is really information that the abortion lobby, supporters of abortion, don't want us to have.
Yeah. Why do you have to pay for emergency room data? You would think that that'd be just something that is out there, because doesn't that help us if we can do reports on these and look at the numbers? Why is that something we have to pay for?
I don't know. I think that really shows that we need more transparency on this. Thankfully, a few states do have that information publicly available. Arkansas, for instance, passed a law that it's mandatory to report abortion complications. So Arkansas banned abortion in 2022, but before that, we can know exactly how many complications they were having. That information is also pretty easy to find in New Jersey and South Carolina. So there's a few states that do have transparent reporting. Florida's really good on reporting on abortion. They update the number of abortions very frequently, but a lot of states aren't transparent about this information at all.
It's insane to me. I think a lot of people don't realize that even the abortion numbers and what Planned Parenthood's Guttmacher Institute, for those of you who don't know, Guttmacher is the research arm for Planned Parenthood. What they report is based on the states that do report. Like California doesn't report anything. There's multiple states that don't report, and you don't have to report anything as it pertains to abortion, which is really sad. I mean, if we actually care about women, we should be reporting these numbers and reporting any complications and things along those lines. So you had an article recently that is diving into this exactly, talking about the abortion pill, and what were essentially the FDA had some sort of regulations and then they didn't have regulations. What were the regulations and what did they remove, and what are we seeing in the report that you shared in your article?
In April 2021, around the time of COVID, the FDA relaxed restrictions on the abortion pill. The FDA approved the abortion pill in 2000, but for years, a woman had to go to the doctor, have a couple appointments, and get ultrasounds, etc., before she could get the abortion pill. So the woman would be under medical supervision. But after the FDA relaxed those restrictions, a woman can just get the abortion pill online, no contact from a doctor, can take it at home all by herself, and if something goes wrong, she has no one to go to besides the emergency room because she wasn't connected with a doctor, and it can leave women in some really dangerous situations.
Isn't that crazy? I mean, for the longest time we hear it's between a woman and her doctor, right? You know, just leave it in the woman in her doctor's office, like they decide what's best for her and her body. But now you can go literally pick up a phone call, go online and do this, and they're not checking these women, are they? They're not looking for an ectopic pregnancy. They're not seeing how far along she is gestationally. She might think that she's, 5, 6, 7 weeks along when really she's 12, 13, 14 weeks along. There's so many complications that can happen from not having some sort of an exam. If we're talking about, people who are pro-abortion, you should want a woman to have this exam and be checked to make sure that things are done safely as they can be. There's no such thing as a safe abortion. Obviously, you and I know that. Did you reach out to anybody in the abortion industry for comment on this? Like, have you ever heard from them? Do they say anything about removing the restrictions?
I think we saw a lot in the election, the narrative that abortion bans kill women. We heard the stories of Amber Thurman and Candy Miller, who died from complications of the abortion pill. But I think we aren't hearing a lot of talking about how abortion bans, they're saying abortion bans are what kill women, but I think not a lot of studies, not a lot of research at all has been done on how allowing abortion can hurt women. And I spoke to some emergency room doctors for this article who are pro-life, and just like you said, they said that if a woman is farther along and takes the abortion pill, or if she has an ectopic pregnancy, this can be extremely dangerous, but she would have no way of knowing that if she just gets the pill online, and a woman can develop sepsis, a number of other serious complications from an incomplete abortion if some of the baby's tissue remains in the woman's body after the abortion pill. That can be super dangerous for the woman. But like you said, they're not connected to a doctor, so their only course of support is going to the emergency room, and sometimes they're waiting way too long. It's not being monitored. And like you said, there's no safe abortion, but this really is putting the woman's life in serious danger.
Yeah. And so in the report, the article, you also mentioned something that the emergency room doctors are sharing with you, and that's that women are being coached not to say when they've had an abortion pill, because, when it comes to finding these numbers, sometimes women are coming in and saying that they've had a miscarriage. So those are going into miscarriage numbers, right? And there's some sort of disconnect. What's happening?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that a lot of that does come from misinformation we see in the media about care for women who have had abortions. So there is no state, regardless of their abortion laws, where if a woman who had abortion complications went to the doctor wouldn't treat them for that, regardless of if the abortion was legal, illegal, or not. In every state, a woman could get medical care she needs, especially if she has a miscarriage. Of course, no doctor is going to decline to care for that woman, but misinformation about that, I think, is causing women to lie about taking the abortion pill. They're scared they're going to go to jail or something like that, but that's really not an issue. That's not something that would happen anywhere. And I think that fear tactics we're seeing from the abortion industry causing women to not tell the truth about if they've taken an abortion pill really does put them in more danger, because the doctor's going in blind, not sure how to properly care for this woman because they don't know exactly what's happened.
Right. And I think that's very important. We need to be advocating, and if the abortion pill is so safe and it's such a, women's rights issue and we're parading it around and celebrating it, then why can't a woman go into the hospital and say, I took the abortion pill? Even in pro-life states, they're not going, nothing's going to happen with them saying, hey, I took the abortion pill. They're inducing this fear. So are you saying that women can get miscarriage care, ectopic pregnancy care in pro-life states?
Of course, every single law in pro-life states that are limiting or banning abortion has an exception to save the life of the mother. And I, of course, in an ectopic pregnancy situation would not consider that an abortion, because the intention of an abortion is to end the life of the baby. And the intention of a procedure in an ectopic pregnancy is to save as much life as possible. Unfortunately, tragically, in those situations, the baby's usually too small for their life to be saved. But the goal is to save as many lives as possible. And so in no state could a woman with an ectopic pregnancy be unable to get the care she needs, and in no state would a woman with complications from a miscarriage be unable to go to a doctor and receive the care she needs for that very sad situation.
Yeah, any competent doctor knows this. And so it just makes you wonder, and this is speculation here. I know that, you're a journalist and you probably have a lot of integrity and want to be completely factual and truthful. So I'll say it because this is just my opinion. I think that there are people who are weaponizing this. I think that there are doctors who either are completely incompetent, which I have a hard time thinking that you can go to medical school and not read legislation, because the legislation is pretty dang clear. If you pull it up, and anybody can Google it, anybody can pull up the legislation in Georgia or Florida or Texas or any of these states that are, we're seeing come under fire. You can read that. In Georgia, where Amber Thurman happened, you can read those cases, or you can read the legislation, and it is clear that ectopic pregnancy care is allowed, miscarriage care is allowed. None of these things are banned. Women are not dying because of this. And so it begs the question, like, why are doctors doing this? Is there, political activism behind this? Are they waiting intentionally? Is it just malpractice? Which, by the way, malpractice does exist. There have been, I think it's annually 200,000 people die per year just from medical malpractice. Now, that's not all abortion cases, obviously, and that's just medicine in general, but that does exist. There are doctors are people, they make mistakes, or maybe they're overworked, or they don't have enough employees at the hospital. There could be a number of reasons, but somewhere in the back of my mind, I wonder if some people are using this as some sort of political activism, sick and twisted way of saying, like, look, she almost died. We had to wait till she got this close to actually save her life. And we know that that's not the case. You just have to use a reasonable judgment when it comes to that. I want to ask, I'm listening to you talk and I'm so impressed by you. And I just want to say shout out to Students for Life and you as a whole, but this is what we do at Students for Life is, trying to work with high school students and college students and really raise up the next generation of pro-life leaders, whether that's speakers or people who start a nonprofit or become journalists or have a pregnancy resource center. There's all sorts of things. And it just is so amazing talking to you and listening to you. So what is it that got you passionate about this issue to begin with?
In high school, I decided to do my senior thesis on this issue, and the more I learned about it, the more I felt like this was really something that I wanted to spend my life talking about and sharing information about with people, so that, one, women can have correct information so that hopefully they can choose life, and so that other people can vote pro-life, can choose to talk to other people in a pro-life, life-affirming manner. And so I have always just been really passionate about saving unborn babies and supporting women in unplanned pregnancies, and so that's why I wanted to write about this.
Yeah, that's awesome. I guess it goes hand in hand with journalism and wanting to get the truth out there and report on what is, good, true, and beautiful. So essentially, and say, like, this is what's true. We're going to speak truth and love, and then that's the same thing as it comes to the issue of abortion and life, and wanting these women to have true informed consent, which is what they don't have when it comes to the abortion side. So, let's see, on the topic of miscarriage, we touched on this very briefly. In the article, it says that there is evidence that the ER visitation rate for miscarriages increased following the introduction of the FDA's new policy. So we're seeing that increase, but we do think that there's a chance that could be because of the abortion pill.
Absolutely. So the ER doctors who I spoke to said that abortions are very often miscoded as miscarriages because maybe the woman isn't telling the truth, maybe a nurse is filling this out and is just assuming it was a miscarriage. She said sometimes doctors don't want to ask because that could traumatize the woman. If it was a miscarriage, you wouldn't want to assume it was an abortion. So there's a variety of reasons why these abortions are being miscoded as miscarriages, but I think because we know this is happening and we see the miscarriage rate increasing after this, it does suggest strongly that it's likely that the FDA relaxing those restrictions on the abortion pill did probably contribute to the rate of ER visits for abortion complications going up.
That's so crazy to me. I mean, it just is mind-boggling. So you have another article titled "Michigan Democrats Want to Teach Minors About Abortion as Family Planning Option." What are we seeing? What is going on in Michigan? Break that down for us.
A Democratic representative with 21 other co-sponsors in the Michigan legislature who are all Democrats, they proposed a bill to change the sex education standards in Michigan. They've been the same for a while and they wanted to change. So there was a line in those standards that said that abortion cannot be taught as a family planning option. And these Democrats suggested crossing that line out so that it seems like they want teachers to teach children that abortion is a family planning option, which I think is very shocking. I would assume that most parents don't want their kids learning that if they unexpectedly are pregnant, they don't know what to do, they should get an abortion, that that's a birth control method. I think that's very shocking, and I hope to see that bill not pass.
That's insane to me that's even anything when we're talking about other people's children, minor children. Why are we even doing this? I mean, to me, comprehensive sex ed is just absolute garbage to begin with. I think it's absolutely insane because they're not really teaching abstinence. They're not telling you that you don't have to participate in sex. They're encouraging you to be sexually active. They're encouraging you to do these things. And then they're saying, oh, this is how you prevent, an STD or a pregnancy. You use a condom or you use contraceptive of some sort. And then if you do get pregnant, you have an abortion. They're not sharing these parenting options. They're not saying, hey, you don't even have to participate in the beginning. And if you don't participate in the beginning, you don't have to worry about parenting options or any of these other options because you're practicing abstinence. And then we know that that is the only thing that is 100% foolproof and will work to not create a child, because when you have sex, that's what happens. And it's so sad because it's starting super young. I remember seeing, you might recall it, it was maybe a few years ago, they were handing out condoms, I forget which state it was, as young as 10 years old, giving bags of condoms to students at a school. 10 years old. I have an 8-year-old who wouldn't even know. I mean, in 2 years, she's homeschooled, so I still hope she doesn't know what that is in 2 years. But what? It's just wild to me. And then you reported too in Massachusetts, what's going on there? Same thing. You can't opt out of this stuff.
Yeah, that was really a shocking discovery in Newton, Massachusetts. They had Transgender Week of Awareness last week. And so I looked into that a little bit more and found out that this school district has a policy where parents can opt their kids out of sex ed class because that's part of Massachusetts law, but they can't opt their child out of gender identity, sexuality, or sexual orientation, which I think is probably the part of sex ed parents would most want to opt their kids out of. They're teaching this very, very young. I talked to some parents who said this is being taught as young as kindergarten. Massachusetts has standards on gender identity starting in kindergarten. This is something being taught very, very young, and parents in the school district cannot opt their kids out. They don't have the option to say this doesn't align with my faith, or even I'm just not comfortable with my child this young learning about that type of thing. That's not an option for parents in this district.
That's insane to me. Who is behind this gender ideology and comprehensive sex ed most of the time that you're seeing? Who is behind the curriculum and pushing it?
I think there's a lot of big LGBTQ advocacy groups that have a lot of money behind them that are pushing this in schools. We have GLAAD, the Trevor Project, to name a couple examples, that are pushing this, what they call sexual education, that is teaching kids things that they really don't need to ever learn this much detail about transgenderism in school to minors. It's really shocking to see this being pushed.
And what about the comprehensive sex ed stuff? Who's behind that?
I'm not sure. I think there's a lot of different groups we see pushing this. Like, we see a lot of, in different school districts, you'll see kind of similar things like the genderbread person, for instance, teaching kids. There's a gender spectrum is behind a lot of the sex ed curriculum, teaching kids there's a whole spectrum of genders. They could be anything on the spectrum. They don't even have to choose one. And I think that we see their documents in a lot of different schools. So I think
Yeah.
they're definitely behind a lot of this.
So what I find too, when it comes to the comprehensive sex ed aspect, is there's a lot of different, what look like smaller curriculum companies that are most often associated with Planned Parenthood. But if parents see the name Planned Parenthood on their kids' comprehensive sex ed curriculum that's coming into the school, if the school even allows them to see it these days, they're going to freak out. But if they see the words Planned Parenthood, most often you're going to have people who have cause for pause. So they're going to say, what is going on here? But when you have it under some, name that doesn't relate in your mind to Planned Parenthood, then you're like, okay, well, they probably know what they're talking about. Little do a lot of parents know that a lot of these smaller organizations partner with or are sister companies to Planned Parenthood, and they create this curriculum in conjunction with, which is really sad. Honestly, it's very manipulative. And you think, like, if this is such a good curriculum and these are things that we should be teaching kids, especially with the gender theory stuff too, if we should be teaching this kids, like, these people should be loud and proud about pushing it into the classroom and not hiding under different names that parents don't exactly know what they are. Do you see that there's a lot of combination with the gender stuff that's happening and being pushed, and the hormones and hormone blockers and all that kind of stuff, and Planned Parenthood, the abortion industry as a whole?
Definitely. We know that Planned Parenthood is giving out these hormones, potentially providing referrals for these surgeries, and they're getting into schools. Planned Parenthood is going into schools and talking to kids not only about abortion, but also about what they call gender affirming care, these transgender medical interventions for children that are irreversible and can have serious long-term effects on fertility, bone health, various other things. And I think you're totally right that there is a connection between those things. We have these far left causes of late-term abortion that should be teaching kids that should be destigmatized, acceptable, teaching that you can be any gender you want and you can change your body to match that. You can be born in the right body. I think these things are definitely all connected.
Yeah, it's crazy to see it. In my head, I'm thinking, why would they want to be pushing these hormones and essentially chemically castrating these kids at a young age? Like, they make money from abortion. They love abortion. But when you think about it, they can make money off of abortion one, maybe two, three times. If somebody's getting pregnant consistently and having multiple abortions, 4 or 5. I've seen some people, have numbers as high as that when it comes to abortion. But when you start giving a child hormone blockers and you start putting them on these hormones and you allow them to go through these surgeries, you create a lifelong client. Like, you don't have to worry about abortion anymore. It's sad because we're harming women through abortion, and then we're harming children, male and female, through these hormones, and seeing such a devastating effect on our youth today.
Yeah, you're totally right. I think that the gender industrial complex, as some people call it, is an extremely lucrative industry. Like you said, you get a kid on hormones, they're going to be on hormones the rest of their life. These surgeries can cost thousands and thousands of dollars, and the upkeep for that is lifelong because your body knows that this is not your biological sex and it will continue rejecting it for the entirety of that patient's life. So the upkeep for that is extremely expensive, very painful, just very, very difficult. We hear from detransitioners about terrible things they have to deal with for years even after stopping taking these hormones. So it really is something that even if you want to detransition, that costs thousands and thousands of dollars more. So hospitals, Planned Parenthood, anyone giving out these transgender medical interventions have a lot of money to gain.
Yeah. So I don't know if you saw this morning, or maybe it was last night, Doge, Elon Musk, Vivek Ramaswamy are doing this Department of Government Efficiency program where they're going to try to cut expenses and make the government more efficient and cut positions and all of these things. And I didn't look into it super in depth, so maybe you know a little bit more than I do at the moment. But they mentioned in things that they're interested in cutting and looking at Planned Parenthood. Did you see anything along those lines? Have you heard any rumblings that are going on behind the scenes?
I think that would be awesome. I think it's just horrible that federal funding is going to abortion. I think another thing that hopefully will be cut is Department of Defense and the VA paying for employees to get abortions. I hope it's really encouraging to hear that DOJ is going to be targeting this, and I really hope the Trump administration will be rooting out all the different ways that the federal government taxpayers are funding abortion.
100%. So a lot of people, pro-life people, were disappointed when President Trump has kind of gone maybe a little bit wishy-washy on the life issue. He was maybe a little bit more proudly pro-life the last election cycle, or I suppose last couple of election cycles. And then this election cycle, we saw him kind of tone it down a little bit at the advice of his advisors around him. Do you think that we could see him become even more pro-life while he's in office? We know that J.D. Vance historically has been very pro-life. Do you think that he's swayable and that we're going to see some movement there that, those pro-lifers who are disappointed can look forward to?
I really hope so. I think that the left has just gone so far on abortion that there are a lot of opportunities that he has to push back on that. For instance, like we said, cutting funding for Planned Parenthood, signing the bill to repeal the FACE Act. If that were to pass Congress, that would be a really good move. The FACE Act has been weaponized against pro-lifers to throw them in jail for trying to persuade people not to get abortions. And so he could definitely do something there to stop that from happening. I think there's a lot of things that President-elect Trump can do to protect pro-lifers and to protect life that I really hope that he'll receive counsel to do that. I wrote an article recently about some different steps he can take. One of those would be investigating pregnancy centers that have been attacked and we don't know who did it, or even if we do know, they haven't been indicted or convicted, they've faced no punishments. Pardoning pro-lifers who have been punished for praying at abortion clinics. There are a lot of things that he can do to promote the pro-life cause, even though abortion bans have gone to the states to decide. I think there's still a lot that he can do on the federal level.
100%. And I'm hopeful that he will. I do think that he can be swayed. I do think that with presented the right information and further education, that he can go back and become more pro-life. Like, the president that we know and love, we saw him at the March for Life, which was fantastic. We loved seeing him there. And I think if he thinks it's a states' rights issue, and if that's going to be his stance, well, then Planned Parenthood doesn't deserve any federal dollars. That should be a state issue alone. They don't get federal taxpayer dollars because it's a state's issue. That's my opinion anyway. And I'm hopeful that, Elon and Vivek can get in there, and that's something that they're going to look at as well. And like you said, Department of Defense, the VA, all of this is really, really sad when it comes down to it, because this is our money that's paying for it. And we really shouldn't have to pay for something that completely goes against what we stand for. And, the role of the government is to protect the right, our rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, of which you don't have any of the rights that we talk about without the right to life. Elizabeth, thank you so much for joining. If you could say one thing to those who are maybe fearful to speak out. It's not always easy to talk about this. You're a journalist. You probably get it all the time and get hate all the time because you're reporting on these things that are sensitive issues, and they trigger people one way or the other. Either people love you or they're going to hate you, like on this issue. If you could say one thing to those people who are kind of hesitant, inside they feel like, I want to say something, I should say something, I do care about these issues, I'm convicted about these things, what piece of advice would you give them to speak out?
That's a great question. I think, like you said, the right to life is the most fundamental right. If you don't have that, you don't have anything. And the world is telling women that you can't do it if you get pregnant on your own. There's no way that you can raise this baby, live your life, and be happy. And I think that encouraging women that they can do it, that life is a beautiful gift, it's so meaningful, and motherhood just brings so much joy. And I think that telling people that the more you're able to encourage women, that they have options, they have support from so many people, from pregnancy centers, from churches, from many, many pro-life Americans, that if they can just be a support system to these women, it makes a world of difference in encouraging them to choose life and raise their baby.
Yeah, absolutely. So will we be seeing you in DC the week of the March for Life?
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. Are you going to be reporting on the ground there?
Yes, hopefully going to be doing some interviews with some attendees, so that'll be really exciting to see.
Fantastic. We'll keep an eye out for you. So if you guys are listening now, just in preparation, the March for Life is January. You guys can meet us in DC. Everybody will be marching. It's from the National Mall down to the Supreme Court, typically is how it goes. And then the day after the March for Life is the Students for Life National Pro-Life Summit. So you'll have a lot of speakers there. We have Dr. Ben Carson, who's going to be speaking, Kaylee McEnany, Kristen Hawkins. I will be there doing a panel. We would love to see you there, Elizabeth. I don't know if you guys are planning on covering that or not, but that is, we're going to have all of our students. Usually it's around 3,000 students. And so we would love for you guys to grab your tickets. You can get them at studentsforlife.org or at nationalprolifesummit.com as well. Elizabeth, where can everybody find you, find your reporting, follow you on social media, all of the above?
You can read my work and my colleagues' work at thedailysignal.com and follow me on X at @TheElizMitchell.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you so much.